Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Did you know you can advertise on podcasts?
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Find out more at podvertise.com.au. That's podvertise with an s.com.au. Ozcast.
Well, he's a former number one draft pick who would go on to play 231 games for the mighty Carlton Football Club and win the Best and Fairest award as well before finishing his career in his hometown of Adelaide at the Crows. He was an intriguing character throughout his time at the top, a player that a lot of fans couldn't always get a read on. So hopefully we'll peel back a few of those layers during this chat. A chat that's brought to you by ISC Sport, Australia's leading provider of team apparel, and thanks to them we have a $250 voucher to give away for the best listener questions submitted to this man, my guest on Grades with Garby today, the freshly retired and looking fresh as well, Bryce Gibbs. Good to see you, mate. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Garby.
Do you remember where, I put this on Twitter, so you may have seen it, and I hope you remember anyway. Do you remember where we first met?
Mate, how could I forget? How could I forget my first away experience in the away section of a Liverpool game? That's been probably one of my highlights of my career, actually, to experience something like that. And I can't remember running into you as such, but I did remember the tweet that you tweeted out post that game, and it actually got a lot of interaction and got a bit of hype about it. So I didn't even know that you spotted me, to be honest.
I was going to the media section, but I had to walk through the area that was the Liverpool away section on the way to my seat, and we crossed paths, and I just shouted out to you, Bryce Gibbs, amid the excitement of a Liverpool game, and I was just surprised to see you, and we had a bit of a chat then, and then tweeted that you were at the game, and all the fans loved it, knowing that you were a Liverpool fan and enjoying some Premier League action, and we stayed in touch ever since. What a game though, Liverpool 3-2, and I think it was a 96-minute winner. So a fair game to go to. Yeah,
it was. And a funny story about that, one of my best mates who I was travelling with at the time, not a soccer head at all, so he sort of didn't really understand it all. And we actually didn't have tickets to the game. And I penciled it was coming towards the end of the trip, and I knew they were playing QPR the weekend I was leaving. So I was like, I'll book an Airbnb sort of close to the ground. So if I could, I'll try and get tickets while I'm over there. Sort of nothing panned out. And I said to me mate, Mark Austin it was, who I lived with back in Melbourne, I said, look, come with me to this game. Let's just go for a walk around the ground, see if we can scalp some tickets, not knowing that we'd have any luck. So sure enough, we met some people outside the ground who had tickets in the away section. And, you never know how much you can trust some people, flogging off tickets. And they were about 250, 300 quid a ticket. So, Mark's like, I'm not sure I want to spend the money. You don't know much about it. And I said, mate, I had to basically convince him. I said, mate, it'll be worth it. And then we bought the tickets, and we were a bit nervous walking in, but it all checked out, and we were actually in the away section. And that first half, there wasn't much action and there wasn't much happening. So I was like, I felt so bad. I've just made Mark tin up like 400 Aussie to come to this game. But yeah, the way the game played out in the end, I think he really enjoyed the experience and got around it. So it worked out really well.
Brilliant. I'm sure he did. And it became a bit of a regular pilgrimage for you, didn't it? At the end of the season, you'd go and take in Liverpool games and do a bit of a tour of the UK.
Yeah, it was. It had been on the bucket list for a number of years, and obviously lucky enough that most off seasons I've been able to travel to all parts of the world. But Europe was a place that I sort of didn't get to until sort of later on, or mid to later on in my career. And once I got over there and actually saw a game live, and it was funny. looking forward to the pub experience before the game. And my first game was a Champions League game, Liverpool v FC Basel in Switzerland. So leading into that game, we just went to a random pub. We're just being overseas in a different country, being the away supporters, you're not sure where to go exactly, that if you're 100% going to be safe. But we just went to the pub where there were more Liverpool supporters than not. And it's funny how it works out. We just happened to stand next to some Scousers and ask where you're from, had a bit of a chat, had a few beers, and we said we're coming back to Anfield for the game next week, and we exchanged numbers, and they said to us, you need to be at this pub at this time. And sure enough, we just backed it in, and we met all these amazing Liverpool supporters and people that have been members for 50 years, and to hear all their stories, and we've actually made some really good friendships out of all those travels over the journey. So it's been a pretty cool experience.
Fantastic. And do any of those people stumble across who you are during that experience and then start asking you about it as well?
Not all. It's hard to actually explain to them what we do. So each time I've gone over there, I've been with a couple of different boys. So yeah, you can show them vision and sort of explain the rules of AFL, and they just you think they're getting it, and then they just mate, I got no idea. Who cares? Let's go. Sure shout, isn't it? So back to the bar we go. So
brilliant. On that though, because I remember asking this to Steve Cornelio. He's similar to you, like massive sports head, big football fan, goes at the end of every season and takes games in. Do you ever find it weird that you become this super fan and you're fawning over a team and superstars from the Liverpool side, when back in Australia you feel that role and you've got people stopping you every 2 minutes for a photo, and you've got half the country who adore what you do? Did you ever find it odd that you, at the end of the season, you switched into the other mode?
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose it gives you a bit more appreciation for just sport lovers in general, and obviously here in Australia in AFL, it's a big deal. And there are days over the journey where people come up to you and want a photo, or you might be at a pub and having a beer and just don't want to put up with it. And yeah, it is hard. But then when you think about exactly that, when I'm over in Liverpool and Stevie G walks past, I'm like, I go to water and I'm that nuffy that needs to go over and shake his hand and have his autograph. So when you start thinking of it like that, we are just sports lovers, and you do cop it a bit more here in Australia, obviously being in the AFL, but just take a moment to think about, I would do exactly the same thing in a different situation. So you just got to roll with it.
I remember as well, around that time when we met, we actually went for a beer in London, and you said that not only do you go and take sport in, but you actually needed to get away from Melbourne and from Australia at the end of the season and almost have close to a month of isolation where you get away from it all. Did the AFL world just become a bit too suffocating for you at times, and that was almost therapeutic?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you haven't had a great year team-wise, or you've had a bad month or two individually. Sometimes you just want to go and relax and go up to the pub and have a counter and a beer, and you just feel like you got eyes on you at times. And yeah, it's not a great feeling. Everyone sort of goes through it, but yeah, that opportunity to get out of Australia and just sort of not feel like you're being watched and being judged on what you're doing. I certainly look forward to the couple of months in the off season. That's for sure.
I dare say that's a relieving part of retirement, which you've just announced, Bryce, from the AFL world. Is that sitting comfortably with you now, that decision?
Yeah, it is. It was an extremely hard decision for me to come to, but one I spent a lot of time thinking about, and looking back, it was the right time. The last couple of years had been really mentally draining for me, and it was starting to take its toll. And yeah, I think putting up a brave face and committing and putting in the hard yards and good attitude, and which I'm a proud person. I wouldn't have gone about it any other way, but after a while it did started to take its toll. So as hard as it was, I got a lot of advice off of people that I trust, friends, family, people in the footy world community. came to the decision that this year was the right time to step away from where I personally was at and where the footy club was at that time.
A couple of things that you've said in your last two answers. Firstly, about being watched when you maybe haven't had a great game and how that can affect you, and also the pressures of AFL. I think a lot of fans have this perception of you that maybe you didn't care as much as others. I'm not saying it's accurate, but maybe that was the perception from the outside, that he just plays on talent and maybe doesn't care about winning or losing as much as other players do. Was that an unfair perception of you? What was your real emotion like in regards to that?
Yeah, I tried to didn't pay too much attention to it, but I think that's just ridiculous to accuse someone of not caring and not trying. Full stop. I think that's a bit unfair. But mate, I as elite sports person, you ride the roller coaster of the ups and downs, and when you were having those downs, I was training and working harder than anyone, knowing that that's what was going to get me out of that rut and help the team going forward. But when you sit back and listen to it all, those people that are probably being critical and having an opinion most of the time they're just doing it because they're passionate about footy, their club, the players, and they want the team to be successful. Unfortunately, over my career, I only played in about 5 finals, and 2 of those were winning finals. So, not having a lot of success over my career, the fans ride it just as much as anyone. So those people that, would say some things in the moment after being, if they were disappointed with the game, I guarantee you if I was to run into them down the street, they would say good day, shake your hand, and be really nice about it. So I tried to look at it like that and look at it not as a personal attack, but just some of the fans are just passionate, frustrated at times, because I certainly get like that, especially when the Reds are struggling from time to time. So, although I won't get on the Twitter and get into blokes, because I know exactly what that's like. But just it comes down to just the passion that the supporters are. They are the heart and soul of the footy club. So you can't blame them for that.
A nice sense of perspective on it all. And if anyone doubted how much you loved the game and competition, I guess you've answered that in the best possible way by the simple fact that you're playing on in the Sandful in a lower level competition, which is unusual for former number 1 draft picks and guys who have won best and fairest at big clubs and played so many games and been superstars of the competition. Not many players of that ilk go and play in the lower level competition, as revered as the Sandful is in South Australia. Why have you made that call?
Well, selfishly, I still think I should be playing AFL next year. So to put it into the simple terms. So, when I stepped away, I said to myself, look, I'll take some time just to relax, take a deep breath, reflect on a 14-year career, which I did. And then I said to myself, I'll have a coffee if teams want to have a coffee with me, I'll have a coffee. If that's in the SANFL, if that's local level, if that's in the country. And I did. I had a cross-section of teams hit me up and caught up with, not all of them, but a lot of them. And again, I had the decision to make. I needed to be clear in my mind if I wanted to play in the SANFL. That comes with a lot of commitment still. It's still a pretty serious competition and a lot of hours outside of full-time work. So I've got a young family, and I wasn't sure whether I was prepared to commit to the hours and that sort of thing. So it took some time to meet with all the clubs and go through a few things. And as the time sort of went on, the fire in the belly is still there. And I certainly know once the AFL season rolls around next year, I'm probably going to be a bit edgy and a bit, bit sad that I'm not there anymore. So off the back of that, I know I'll still want to play at the highest level possible, and that's sort of what helped me make my decision to go back to the SANFL.
So did you have chats with AFL clubs then?
No, I didn't. That was a part of my decision making when I decided to retire. An option was to ask the Crows, can you look for a trade for me, knowing that I had another year to go on my contract. And with the crazy year it's been, we weren't sure list sizes getting cut. I'll be 32 leading into next season. the teams take a chance on you. There was so many unknowns, and we weren't going to know those answers until probably right now. And I retired in sort of mid-September, and I come to the conclusion I wasn't prepared to wait with so many unknowns. Then knowing if nothing happened, was I mentally prepared to be able to go back to Adelaide and do another pre-season and go through another year knowing that there's going to be limited opportunities for me to play at the highest level. So that was sort of was something I wasn't prepared to do.
Yeah, makes sense. So you've chosen to play in the Sandful. That'll be great to watch. But you're playing for South Australia and not the club where your dad is a legend. Glenelg, that's sacrosanct, isn't it? What's led to that decision?
Yeah, look, again, it was nearly just as hard as making the decision to retire, to not go back to Glenelg. And yeah, it was, I think everyone just assumed that that's how it'd play out. I'd go back to Glenelg and try and have some success with them. And deep down, I thought I probably would end up there too. But as the negotiations go on and you meet with clubs, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to stay in footy as such. I thought I was, wanted to step away work-wise and do something different for a little bit. But South Adelaide approached me. I had a coffee with their coach, Jared Wright, and he said, "Have you got any interest in coaching?" And I said, I've done a few coaching courses over the journey, and there is some interest there, but working with the young Crows players over the last couple of years, obviously I'd been in and out of the side and spent a lot of time focusing my energy towards those guys to keep myself going at times throughout the year. And I really enjoyed that. And to see some of those guys finally crack it into the senior side and play well, some of that was off the back of some of the work I'd been doing with them. So that sort of development role, mentoring role, I started to really enjoy sort of towards the end of my career, and a spot opened up at their footy club in a full-time development role. So that sort of got me thinking. I was open and honest with Glenelg through those negotiations and said, look, I'm thinking about getting back into footy. South have offered me this sort of role. Have you got anything available at the Bays? And they sort of went away, come back with another great offer. But I think in the end, I think the full-time role in that space was something that really appealed to me. And it was as hard as a decision it was. I think I made the best decision for me and my family and what was going to fit me the best. And,
it makes sense, but a shame in the sense that you don't carry on the Gibbs name at Glenelg. But one that is understandable based on your description. So let's take it back then. We'll go through your time at the Crows and Carlton as well. But your dad, is named in the Glenelg team of the century. So he's so revered there. What's it like growing up with such a famous father in footy mad Adelaide when you start showing a lot of promise as well? What's that sporting childhood like? Yeah,
there was a bit of hype back then. And I probably didn't notice it until I sort of matured a bit as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. I can't remember the early days when he played at Glenelg. I was sort of a little bit too young to remember him running around there. But after Glenelg, he went into the country and played some country footy. And I remember those days a lot more than most. So, spending time at his feet in the footy change rooms, watching him go out, kick goals, and I'd run water for the team. I'd do the scoreboard. So, I knew from a pretty young age that was something that I wanted to do. I suppose once you get a little bit on and you start making some state sides and some rep sides, and probably it was the under 16 carnival that I'd had a pretty good carnival, and there was a chance that I could go father-son to the Crows. So I think that was the moment that sparked a lot of interest and a lot of media hype around me potentially could go high in the draft or could be the first Crows father-son. And I was sort of oblivious to it all at the time, but looking back, I think that's when it all started to get real, and that's when everyone started to make a bit of a fuss about it, I suppose. And how did you handle that pressure? And I guess potentially, if there was some of the stuff you may have copped from opposition players and things like that about,
this player who was so highly touted who had the famous father?
Oh, yeah, you do cob it from time to time, but I've been one to sort of just take it in my stride, I think, over the time. I don't know if that's just naturally how I am, or I don't mind a bit of banter and a bit of, that part of the game. I tend to, one, can handle it. I might dish it back from time to time, and it actually probably makes me play a little bit better. So, I suppose it was probably a bit harder. I got 30 games in for Glenelg before I got drafted, which was, I think, really beneficial for my development and helped me transition into the AFL. But I probably found it a bit more harder playing those 30 games because, senior players, ex-AFL players, bigger bodies, when they sort of came after me and I was, 75 kilos, scruffy hair, like little young kid running around, these blokes are trying to knock your block off and get in. I found that probably more intimidating than anything. But, but lucky I was able to experience 30 games of SANFL footy before I got drafted, though.
And that generated even more hype around you to the point where, from early on in 2006, you were the undoubted number one draft pick, to the point where Essendon and Carlton, the two bottom sides that season, played off for the Bryce Gibbs Cup in terms of getting the number one draft pick. All that talk around you're 16, 17 years of age. How did you deal with that? I can't really remember, to be honest. I'm a pretty easygoing bloke. Not much phases me. I'm walking around the schoolyard at Brighton High, just taking it all in, getting, the teachers are talking to me more. My mates are loving it. But I just tried to keep as normal as possible. Like I still love playing footy with them, still mucking around with them. There was a lot of hype around, especially being from Adelaide, two-team town. They love their footy. They're mad over here for it. So, it did cause a lot of hype, but I knew it was there, but I just sort of cruised through it and was able just to put up with it, I suppose. Was that the same when you then get drafted with the number one pick? You go to a team in Carlton and you're named in the leadership group, which I read the other day. I couldn't believe that. Named in the leadership group under Dennis Fagan before you'd even played a senior game of footy. How did you deal with all of that for someone who was so easygoing, but now it goes into overdrive, of course? Yeah,
and look, let's be honest, it was a bit of a joke looking back. But look, I don't know the reasons. Dennis obviously had his reasons for it. I don't know. The club have been struggling for a number of years, and maybe it was just a publicity stunt for the members to, give them a bit of hope. That I think it was me and Mark Murphy. I think he'd played only about 10 games the previous year as a number one pick. He got injured halfway through the season, but we were put in the group. I don't even think we were asked. We were just told you're going to be in the leadership group. Some players probably didn't like that. I'm sure some players didn't like that. Yeah. Some of the younger guys anyway. But look, from my point of view, and I can talk on behalf of Murph as well, we didn't think we were leaders of the footy club. I hadn't played a bloody game yet. So there was no chance that was the case. But look, what I did get out of it, I was able to go to these meetings, these leadership meetings, see how they interact with the coach, then relay those messages onto the playing group, come up with standards and a set of behaviours and that sort of thing. And I didn't say one word in any of those meetings, but I think just the experience to sit there and see it all unfold, it was, I certainly got a lot out of it. So, I use it as a learning experience more than anything.
Yeah, great. In terms of being the number one draft pick, so looking through your draft list, there's no one around your number who you would say should have been number one and was a massive mistake in terms of the picks compared to some other players who get drafted at number one and they're analysed so closely. Travis Boakman at 5, but he only really hit his peak later on in his career. There was Joel Selwood at 7 though, but 5 other clubs have passed on him as well, so you can't really have that close inspection. You played really well against Geelong, though, throughout your career. And a lot of people asked this question when we had the ISC listener submissions. And they wanted to know, did you play well against the Cats because the Joel Selwood talk did come up from time to time? He should have gone pick one instead of Gibbs. Did that drive you on at all?
That's a good question. I certainly have a lot of respect for Joel and what he's been able to achieve over his career, obviously being taken in the same draft as me and, probably more envious of his success that he's had. But when you talk about playing good games against the Cats, I don't know, you pencil those games into your calendar early on, not so much the Joel factor. It was Geelong was such a successful team through that part of our career, especially early in our career. And as a opposition player, you want to play well in those games. And I don't know, I sort of set myself for those playing against those teams with a lot of great players, and then that sort of shifted to sort of Hawthorn. I'd pencil in when we were playing Hawthorn that year. Hopefully we'd get them twice a year, and at the MCG, and there was going to be a big crowd. It was usually going to be in a prime time spot, and those were the sort of games that I loved playing in. So obviously not playing in many finals over my career. The next best thing to that was these games against these big clubs who have had success and who are the real deal. So I probably sort of got myself up for that factor more so than playing against individuals.
Yeah, right. You had some high moments as well, which we'll get to. But that first season there, I mean, Dennis Pagan gets sacked 3/4 of the way through the season. You finish 15th. I mean, you're part of the leadership group, but you're not really. How tough was that for a kid in their first season of footy? Because let's be honest, the Carlton Footy Club was in a pretty horrible state at that time.
Yeah, that year gave me a lot of just experience, I suppose. I probably selfishly, I wasn't too worried about the result. I was only 18 and, this was a whole new thing. This had been a dream of mine for a number of years, and to be playing against some of my idols and that sort of thing. So it's sort of, I remember the year going really quick, and I was lucky enough to play every game. And I had some couple of lean games through the year, and if I was in any other side, I probably would have had a spell in the twos for a couple of weeks here and there. But I was lucky enough to play the 22, and I probably just wanted to try and establish myself as a player more than anything. That was sort of my main focus, get stronger in the gym, improve my running, improve my skills and that sort of thing. So in that year, I think I started off in the midfield and ended up playing back pocket for most of the year after that. So, a few different roles, a few different things that I got thrown into, and I just sort of used it as a learning experience and how I could continue to develop more so than, finishing bottom, I suppose.
And then it all changes the year after when Chris Judd comes to the club. I mean, it's rare for one player to have such a big impact on the whole fabric of a football organisation. Can you put into words or lay out some specifics in terms of Chris Judd's influence on the playing group and how he managed to have such an enormous one on turning it around?
Oh, mate, it was a defining moment, I think, for the Carlton Footy Club, and no wonder they went so hard for him. And looking back, there's a debate. Oh, they gave up Josh Kennedy, and was it too much? But at the time, you're probably making that decision 9.5 times out of 10.
Yeah.
The way he come in and just set a standard of professionalism, training standards, his preparation. For me and the other young guys at the club to watch a bloke who we've been idolising for years, it's been one of the best things that's happened for me in my career, and I'm sure a lot of other guys could say the same thing. But yeah, he flipped the joint on its head from a playing group point of view, and he wasn't the most sort of vocal leader or wouldn't rant and rave on too much, but the way he prepared leading into games, pre-season, whatever it was, diet, rehab, he just did everything to the absolute letter, and then he'd go out and dominate on the weekend and say, boys, follow me. This is how we're going to do it. And we certainly instantly became a better side as soon as he walked in the door.
I remember hearing a story that he was out for lunch with a few of the players soon after he joined Carlton, and I think it was Andrew Carazzo. This may not be true, but it's a story I heard anyway. Andrew Carazzo ordered a sandwich and some fries to go with it. When the fries came out, he told the waiter or waitress, "No, he's not having those," and sent it back. Is that true? And are there any other stories like that?
I'm not sure if it's 100% that example is 100%, but yeah, in terms of like your diet and what boys are eating, like we'd go to a session and then the boys would be straight into the eggs Benedict with bacon and like, you know, all the rest of it, the sausages and, you know, big big greasy meals. And then Juddy would come in with his bircher or, you know, whatever. But like, I think, so it is true in that sense that he would be like, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you eating that rubbish?" Like, we're preparing to go to battle here, and everyone was like, "Geez, well, Juddy said so." Like, so then next week there's 40 bircher mueslis getting ordered at breakfast. So that was the sort of effect he had on everyone. So yeah,
Juddy says we do. So yeah, things turn around at Carlton after that. You make finals 4 of the next 5 years, and okay, you didn't quite reach the place that you wanted to, but you're playing some good football, and the place is rocking once more. Can you take us to a place, Bryce, because you obviously played a pivotal role in that success, a place where 99.9% of the population will never go to? Playing for a big club like Carlton, the MCG, 90-odd thousand people, you have a win, you maybe kick a goal or have a pivotal role in the triumph. What is that feeling like to be in that moment as a sports person?
Yeah, there's not many feelings that can sort of come close to that. I mean, you know, apart from the obvious, witnessing the birth of my children and, you know, your marriage day and all those sort of things, they're right up there. But yeah, to have a win against an arch enemy, you know, Collingwood, Essendon, Richmond in a final that we might have snuck in because of Essendon got kicked out. So we probably shouldn't have been there anyway, but then go and beat Richmond, like the feeling you get off the crowd and the atmosphere and the siren goes and the energy that runs through your body. It is hard to explain, but there's not many feelings that can sort of top that. So I've been very lucky to play in a number of those big games, you know, 80,000 plus, MCG, both teams cracking in, the crowd going nuts. And yeah, to win those games, it's pretty special.
Is that why players struggle to sleep after a game, because of that adrenaline?
Oh, no doubt. You go home, you're still buzzed up, the adrenaline's still pumping. You're going through the game in your mind. I was notoriously shocking for sleeping after a game. I sort of got to a stage I wouldn't even try to sleep until about 3 o'clock, which was handy because a lot of the EPL games are sort of on at that time. So that actually gave me something to do while I couldn't sleep anyway. So it was handy.
Does that become an addiction, that rush? Is that why players sometimes struggle after retirement, because that goes and it's an impossible sort of natural drug to replace?
Well, I'll be able to fill you in the next couple of months, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, from talking to guys that have retired, and yeah, that is something that they certainly do miss and need to get their fix in other ways. And I think that's why I was keen to stay in footy as well. I'm going to still be playing at a high level. I'm going to be working in player development, so I'll sort of get that buzz out of helping these kids and helping them develop. So, yeah, I think that'll be good for me going forward.
Brett Ratton was there for the majority of the time when those highs were taking place at Carlton, and then was moved on for Mick Malthouse. What did you make of that decision to move Brett Ratton on, and how happy are you for him that he's thriving again in the second chance that he's been given at St Kilda?
Yeah, at the time I really felt for Rat. Obviously being such a great Carlton man, and he was tactically and his footy smarts were the best I've seen. Like he was amazing the way he could analyse games and work out tactics to beat opposition and run plays and again just a really passionate Carlton man. And I think that the thing that Brett lacked early in his coaching was the relationship side of things. I think at times he got feedback about, you're too full on with footy. Like he'd sort of ask about your personal life for 5 minutes, but then it'd always revert back to footy. And that's just how he was. But then I think they made a decision to get Mick in, which obviously that as a playing group, that's out of your control. The club make those decisions for a number of different reasons. And we actually played some really good footy under Rats, and we were a kick out of a prelim 1 year, and I got injured the week before. I think Cruz got injured the week before, and we played West Coast over in Perth, and we lost by a kick. So you never know what could have happened from there. But I think I played some of my best footy under Rats as well, because he was so tactically smart and helped me play through the midfield and helped me do some tagging roles and that sort of thing. But I think he went away and spent some time as an assistant coach over the years, and talking to people who have played under him at St Kilda, I think he's sort of got a great balance now. He's worked out that relationship side, and he's really brought that group together. And I'm so happy that, one, he got another opportunity to coach, because he's certainly a great AFL coach. And to see him have a successful year at St Kilda this year was really pleasing to see. So he was. There was the Crows asked me, can we get 4 or 5 names that we can get to say something to you in the lead into your retirement game? Put a bit of a video together and present it to you at the last training session. And one of those names I wanted to speak about me was Brett Ratton. So, he said some really kind words about my career and what he thought of me as a player and a person. And, that was really special to hear from him. So,
yeah, great. Who were the others that you asked for?
So Mark Murphy and Cade Simpson, obviously two of my best mates. Rats from a coaching point of view. Johnny Barker, who had been an assistant at the Blues, he's still there at the moment. I had a good relationship with him, and he certainly helped me out. And Heath Uni, who I had a lot more to do with at the Crows, who was the head of development, and who's just been offered a line role at the North Melbourne Footy Club. So, those were the guys that spoke and said some nice things.
So Mick comes in. Why didn't it work with him at Carlton? And what was your relationship like with him? Did you not click?
I actually got along with Mick really well. I can't speak for a few others, because I know a handful of guys sort of didn't get along with him for whatever reason, but he was really good to me. I remember having a coffee with him in the pre-season, and up until that point in my career, I played a number of different roles. I'm talking back pocket, half forward tagging roles, on the wing, played midfield for a little bit, then I'd be tagging, then I'd be back to half back. I was sort of not only getting moved around, but I was getting moved around a lot in game as well. I'd play sort of 3 or 4 different roles within the one game. So he sort of come in, he said, look, I've watched it from afar, and I actually did, I played in the international rules game, the series over in Ireland, and Mick was the coach. So I had a little bit of relationship the year before he got to Carlton. So he knew me a little bit, but he basically said to me, look, where do you want to play? And I said to him, I want to play as a midfielder, just play in the midfield. I think that's where I can have the most impact. And he said to me, I'll do it. So he gave me that opportunity to play in the midfield and to take on the other best midfielders in the game. And, again, I think that helped me have a couple of great years and playing to some of my strengths. And I thought, I sort of flourished under Mick for just giving me that opportunity that I hadn't been given so far in my career. So I was very grateful for that.
Fantastic. So then, Brendan Bolton comes in, and obviously things drop off, and you ask for a trade to Adelaide to go to the Crows, and it doesn't transpire at the first time of asking. How awkward was that then coming back to Carlton? Was it a little bit uneasy?
I thought it was going to be, but the relationships, obviously, that I had at Carlton and the process we went through, there was no sort of going behind anyone's back or backstabbing or, lying or whatever it was. The reasons that I put to the club to come home were genuine, and they, even though they weren't happy about it and they certainly wanted to keep me and have me around, they certainly understood. And at the same time, they weren't prepared to let me go for nothing. I was still contracted, and they, from their point of view, that's what they told me. And if you want to look at doing this is what we're going to need in return, because we rely on you heavily, and your leadership and everything that goes with it. We're not going to have that anymore. So, when the deal didn't go down, I was a little bit unsure how it would play out. But honestly, the first day back at pre-season, it had like nothing had happened. Still, the players, I still loved all the players. They loved me, and it was basically back to business as usual from day one. So. I think that's why I was able to go back and have another pretty strong year the following year, because of there was no. If I was going to leave, it was going to be on the right and good terms.
Yeah, it shows how much times have changed, that players understand the position you're in and they don't hold grudges. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, that would have been a bit different at a footy club. With that in mind, a free agency and things like that, just going away from your career for a moment, are you worried now that you've stepped away from actually playing in the AFL that the rich are just going to get richer, the big clubs are just going to get bigger, and the powerful clubs are just going to strengthen even more because of free agency right now and players just leaving for that premiership chance? Is there some concern there that this gap's just going to widen between some of the clubs?
Yeah, you've got to be careful, and there needs to be the right rules and the right things in place so that doesn't happen. But I think free agency is great, especially from a player's point of view, of course. To be able to have some sort of say in where you want to play and potentially where you want to finish your career, and for a whole lot of other reasons as well. Yeah, sure, the clubs, it's going to hurt some clubs from time to time. But yeah, as I said, as long as there's the right balance of what you can get back in return and sort of how it works and that sort of thing, if the AFL can stay on top of that, I think it's important to have still.
Let's get to Adelaide then. General one to start, Bryce. I mean, how would you sum up your time there all in all?
Yeah, frustrating, very frustrating. As I spoke about before, the Crows were pretty keen to get me across, then it didn't happen. And then to come back the next year and be like, look, do you want to look at it again? We haven't changed our position from 12 months ago. Naturally, I'm going to be a little bit wary. There's no way I could put my hand up and be like, yeah, let's go through that process again. And then for it not to happen a second time, I don't think that would have gone down too well. So I sort of needed to know from their end, are you 100% sure? Can you get this done? Because if I'm going to go through this again, it needs to happen pretty much. And they knew what they were going to get when they got me across. They'd chased me for 2 years, and to their word, they did. They got me across, and then my first year, I thought I had a pretty solid year. In a year where we had a lot of injuries, a few other things with camps and whatnot that sort of made things interesting from time to time. But from my point of view, I fronted every week, trained, didn't miss a training session, put my hand up and played some really strong footy at times. So I thought I was going okay, and then fell out of favour pretty quickly, which was a little bit disappointing. And the last 2 years sort of panned out pretty differently. It wasn't sort of a common theme that was trending there. The last 2 years in isolation were very two different years, and I certainly didn't think that my AFL career would sort of end the way it did, knowing that my body's still in really good condition. I've got some high quality footy left in me, and obviously a lot to give in the leadership space and mentoring players as well. So, I certainly don't have any regrets. I made my decision at the time with what I had in front of me, but I would have liked to play more footy for the Adelaide Footy Club and to have a bit more success, that's for sure.
So you joined just after the 2017 grand final. There's the leading teams camp, which you spoke about, which has been so widely discussed. I mean, how did that affect the playing group so much, and why did it? And can you outline some examples as to how it all fell apart because of one camp?
It was an interesting one, and the club said to me, "Look, we're putting this camp together. Are you keen to get involved? Like, there's going to be different levels. Like, the leadership group's going to go through a more intensive time in this camp than like sort of the next group of guys, and then the younger guys. And we want to put you in the leadership one because I'm obviously rocking up to a club." I wanted to build good relationships straight away, and I sort of thought, well, this could be an opportunity for me to get to know the players more and quicker and that sort of thing. So I just saw it as an opportunity to do that. The hard thing was we weren't told what was going to be involved on this camp, and a lot of the details were we didn't really have any details, to be honest. So we sort of went in blind and not knowing what to expect. Like, I think the clubs, their intentions were good around it and genuine that it was going to help us. But, it was obviously a disaster. And it affected players in different ways for different reasons. Personally, I was going into my 13th year, 12th year. I'd been on that many camps over the journey, SAS camps, and, I'd seen it all. I thought I'd seen it all anyway. So I sort of could filter what I could get out of what we were doing, and I could just ignore the rubbish that was going on as well. So I was okay with it. Like, I knew some guys were struggling from time to time with it. And all you can do is just put your arm around them and ask if they're okay and just check in with them, I suppose. But it wasn't until they sort of debriefed it properly later down the track. I mean, they probably should have debriefed it a bit earlier than they did, just to squash it on the head. But, I think the club have put their hand up and said it was a complete miss, and if we could do things differently, we would have. So, that obviously, the media hype around it, especially here in Adelaide, it continued on for too long, like it did. So it is what it is, but it'll go down in folklore now as the Adelaide camp in wherever we were. We hopped on a bus on the Gold Coast and we ended up in New South Wales. So I couldn't even tell you where we were, to be honest. So, looking back, we can have a bit of a laugh about it now, but it hurt the group probably more so than I thought it did at the time, looking back.
Did it hurt the group because they were so angry at the club for what they'd put on, or were there different player reactions to how you should have dealt with it that it actually caused frictions between the players? No,
I think the playing group lost a bit of trust with the footy department, and obviously a lot of details that we weren't allowed to know leading into the camp, and we all had to sign waivers to say we can't speak about it after the events as well. So it was just strange. It was strange the way it played out, and I certainly think the playing group lost a bit of trust with some of the decisions the club were making, and some of the decisions they were making going forward.
Were you attacked personally on the camp at all?
The only thing they could really get into me about is the Carlton days. Said, you're a sellout. You left Carlton and you've come over here. So, look, again, I don't mind that sort of banter, that sort of vibe, as I said earlier. So I was giving it back. Don't worry, I wasn't copping it. But look, as I said, I was able to filter out some things we did on the camp were fine, and we bonded and we got some stuff out of it. I took away those things, and some of the other stuff we were doing, some of the activities, it was just, that was probably an hour of my life I'll never get back, but whatever, I'll get over it and move on.
Really interesting. So Don Pike did drop you at a stage towards the end of his tenure there, and then you didn't play much under Matthew Nicks. Do you have conversations with those coaches? Do you knock on the door and say, what's going on here? Like, I'm clearly good enough to be in this team. I don't understand what the deal is. What are those discussions like?
Yeah, they can be extremely hard at times. And being a more senior player, a lot more experience, the caper, the ins and outs. I wasn't scared to question things. If I didn't think things were quite right, I'd ask questions back. And at times, some of the coaches didn't expect me to. And yeah, some of those conversations can not get heated, but it's like, there's a bit of back and forth, and both parties are trying to put across their opinion on why things are working, why they're not, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. You're going through vision together, you're looking at things, they're saying, well, you should be doing this. And then I'm saying, well, I'm actually thinking about doing that. So can you sort of see where I'm coming from? And it was hard at times. And again, from those conversations, I would go and work hard at working on what they were asking me to work on. And at times, I think that actually took away my strengths. At stages, I got too encapsulated about what I wasn't doing right, and worried about, if I don't do that, what are they, I'll get dragged or I'll get dropped for next week, which I've obviously never experienced that before, rather than thinking, I've actually got strengths and got some great abilities that I bring to this side. I've got to actually just go and do that and not worry about that other stuff. But it got to a point where it was taking my focus away from probably doing my job at times and playing my role. So that was frustrating. But again, all the conversations I've had over the last couple of years with my coaches have been open and honest, and we've both known where we've sat. At times we wouldn't actually come to an agreement, and we just had to sort of walk away and leave it at that. But as I said before, when I felt things weren't right, I would go and hit them up and be like, I don't think this is right. And whether they listened to you or not, they still made decisions off the back of it. And unfortunately, a lot of the decisions didn't go my way. So, I've been actually pretty proud of myself, the way I've sort of handled the last couple of years. And there certainly were times where I wanted to crack the shits and go on a bit of a rant and tell them to whatever I wanted to tell them. But that's where I sort of lent on. I spoke about Heath Uni before, who had a big influence of me over the last, especially 2 years. Having the challenges that I had, it's talking to him and him helping me focus my energy on, these younger kids and help developing them when I wasn't when things weren't going my way and they weren't panning out how I wanted them to. So, but as I said, the 2 years were very, very different. Still proud of the way I pushed through and got through it all in the end.
Yeah, sounds like you handled it with as much class as possible. I've spoken to a few coaches before who have talked about decision-making under pressure, and they've said there's no doubt, looking back, they've made poor decisions purely because of pressure, team selection, things like that, because their mind just gets so muddled. Did that take place with Don Pike, do you think, towards the end? The pressure became so intense that he made decisions that just didn't seem like rational ones at the time?
Potentially. And I don't know. I seem to be on the bad receiving end of some of those decisions as well. Even though we would sit in a meeting and there'd be vision up, and you'd be like, "Oh, Gibby, you haven't done really well here." But in the same clip, there'd be 3 or 4 other blokes that have done probably exactly the same thing I have. But I always seemed at times to get picked out and then dropped. So look into that what you may. People made comments over the years that, something needed to happen, something had to give, and that I was on the receiving end of that at times. And don't get me wrong, some of them I put my hand up, and some of my games and efforts weren't to the level, and I take full responsibility for that. When I knew I wasn't living up to what the team needed, I was the first to put my hand up and be like, yeah, not good enough, I'll fix it. I'll go away if I have to play in the twos for 2 weeks to go and do that. And I would go and do that and do it to the best of my ability. So I'm not saying it was all one way and that I was right every time, because that certainly wasn't the case. But it's sort of, it might have got too much for Don in the end. And that's might have been the reason why he decided to step away and when he did. So I've still spoken to him a number of times since he left the club. So, yeah, again, none of these things are personal. And he's probably making decisions and having conversations with players because he wants to get the best out of them, and he genuinely cares, and I genuinely believe that. So, yeah, none of these decisions and the way it all played out, it's certainly not personal. So he was just probably doing what he thought was best at the time, and that probably happened the same way when he decided to walk away. He thought it was the right time to walk away from the footy club when he did.
We're focusing on your time at Adelaide, and obviously that was frustrating, as you said, but I mean, you've still had a wonderful career. Now that you've retired, I mean, how much pride do you have in what you've been able to achieve? I mean, over 200 games at AFL level, like the number one sporting organisation, sporting competition in the country, regardless of whether you're a number one draft pick or not. How proud are you of what you've been able to achieve?
Mate, I'm so proud. And it sort of ended a little bit sour, and I think some of the Adelaide people just sort of see my career as the last couple of years. They probably actually don't realise the 11 years I had at Carlton and what I was able to achieve. But when I look at it as a whole, mate, I've been so lucky. Like, to grow up as a kid, watching my dad play, then, get to a point in my life where I'm like, I think I can make a go of this, and then to get the opportunity to, and then, to play 14 years in the AFL. Like, I'm very, very lucky, very grateful to have a 14-year career that a lot of people would love to do and just don't get the opportunity to. So when you think about it like that, the relationships that I've made over the journey, the experiences that I've had, even we spoke about the travel before, though not many full-time jobs allow you to travel to different parts of the world over 10 years. So, like, meeting the corporates and the members and the fans, you meet some unbelievable characters in footy clubs, and I've been so lucky to share it over 2 clubs, and the bonds and friendships you create out of footy clubs are very special, and I'm very lucky to be able to play 14 years at the highest level. I'm very proud of it.
Well said, and it's great to hear that. I've got a few quick questions to finish, including our winner of the ISC $250 voucher for some apparel from ISC, the best sports gear in the country. And there were so many good submissions, Bryce. I could ask you about 20 of them. There were some rippers, and some of them did work their way into the podcast. I pinched a couple. Some I already had written down, so I don't think that I stole your question necessarily. But this one I've picked out as the winner. It's from @PaulFootball on Twitter. So I'll get in touch with you, Paul, and sort out your prize. But he wants to know if there was one lesson you learned from your time in professional footy that was invaluable to take into the next part of your life, what would it be?
I think just having that genuine care for people. I think, especially here in Australia, AFL players can get put up on pedestals from time to time. But at the end of the day, we're just normal people. And people can sort of, think you're better than what you are naturally, but we're just normal people. So I'm looking forward to going into the next phase of my life, the next chapter, and working in this full-time job at South, and then who knows what's going to happen after that. But I'm looking forward to just treating everyone how I like to be treated. I don't like to be put up on a pedestal just because I played AFL, and just show genuine care to everyone, because at the end of the day, we're all just people going through life, and that's probably the biggest lesson I'll take out of it. Not to let my past define who I am. I'm just a normal bloke who enjoys a bit of soccer, enjoys a beer at the pub, and enjoys the simple things in life. So I don't know if that answers your question, but thanks for the question, Paul.
I think it does. It's a good question, and I think we've seen that throughout the podcast. Your answer, that certainly reflects in terms of how genuine a person you are, and I think we've shed some light on that. A few more questions to finish before we sign off, Bryce. Best player you ever played with? I think you've kind of answered this, but maybe you've got a different angle on it.
Yeah, it has to be Juddy. He would pack out a stadium of 80,000 people by himself, and I was just one of the lucky ones to be the closest to him while he was doing his thing. So that was special to spend the years playing alongside him. There has been so many great players that I could name, but he's a special one.
The best player you ever played against, and I want to get specific on this, I'm talking one-on-one matchup.
Yeah, so the hardest player I played on was when I was doing some tagging roles through a part of my career, and it was Adam Goods. In terms of the whole package, he could run, he was quick, he could jump, he could mark, he could kick, he was hard to tackle. And we had a couple of years where we had some really good duels. Sometimes I'd get him, I'd keep him quietish, and then other games he would decide when he wanted to turn it on, and he'd make me look silly. So in terms of the whole package and trying to stop someone when they're absolutely flying, the hardest was definitely Adam Goods.
Fantastic. Best coach you had?
Oh, geez, this one's a hard one. I certainly have taken a lot from all my coaches, but I mentioned it before. I did have a good relationship with Rats, hence why I wanted him to say a few words when I retired, and I enjoyed playing under Rats.
And the best spray you ever copped throughout your career, be it from a teammate or a coach? Or an opposition player.
What about some people hanging over the fence? I probably got more sprays from the crowd than anyone else. But I've copped a few. Mick was good on the tongue. He could get angry. Playing at fullback sometimes, getting like when I was tagging, I'd get dragged back to the fullback line, and the cheer squad, especially Collingwood, these sort of teams where the cheer squad like getting involved in the game. Probably the explicits probably won't allow me to say some of the things that they said, but I copped some good ones from the Collingwood cheer squad, that's for sure.
Do you ever laugh with your opponent about that as that's going on?
You do, especially when someone actually says something really funny. You want to turn around and give him credit for it. So, you do have a chuckle with your opponent and say, that one was actually pretty good. We'll have to give him that one.
Fantastic. Mate, I've really enjoyed this. You've been sensational. It's been really good to just get some insights from you on a top career, and it's great that we can sit here doing so for so many people who listen after meeting in the corridors of a QPR Liverpool game 6 years ago. It's funny how life works out in that regard, but thank you so much, and enjoy your Sandful time, but also life without all those pressures of AFL, so you can sit back and watch the Reds hopefully win another title.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I really enjoyed the chat, and probably more enjoyed talking about the Liverpool stuff than I did my career, mate. So no doubt we'll catch up and get a couple of games in the future. Looking forward to it.
That sounds good. And the Liverpool supporters clubs all messaged me and said they're desperate for you to join them for a game. They know you have a couple of times over the journey, and they want you to get in there and watch some Reds games with them in the future. So I'm sure you will.
Well, I think there's an early game next week, Brighton, which is about 11 o'clock kickoff here in Adelaide. So no doubt I'll sneak down to the Arca Bar and have a few beers with the boys.
Fantastic. You're a true man of the people. Bryce, congratulations on a wonderful career, and thanks so much for joining me on Greats with Garby.
Cheers, Garby.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.